Welcome to Door Insider, where we take a deep dive into the mindset, the why, and the how of the industry's top entrepreneurs, leaders, recruiters, and salespeople. We are the Door Nation. Here is your host, Lee Barber. Let's go.
All right, gang, welcome to Door Insider. Today's special guest is Chris Melink. I'm going to go through Chris's history here, gang, so excuse me if I mess up. It's extensive and it's badass. In 2010 to 2013, Chris was with Apex and Vivint. 2013 to 2022, DishOne and Caliber. 2022, current Solar Pros. Roles: sales rep, sales manager, director of training, VP of training, VP of products, Dish, ADT, T-Mobile, director of internet programs, regional sales manager, SVP, Evolve. Accolades: 2014, number one sales rep, DishOne. 2022, sales rep, number two sales rep, Caliber Solar transitions to the top. Speaker, D2DCON 2016. Speaker, D2DCON 2019. Founder, partner, Solar Pros 2022. That's pretty dope. Number one region, 2022 Caliber. Number one division, 2023 Pros. Number one division, 2024 Pros. This was my favorite here in the ladder climb here. 2011, Chris sold 65 alarms installed in Santa Monica, California. 2012, 75 alarms installed in Pittsburgh. 2013, 50 Dish installs, Boise. 2014, 428 Dish installs. Chris starts to gain some traction here. 2015, 528 Dish installs, Denver, Colorado. 2021, 65 solar installs, year one, 2021 in solar. 2022, 119 solar installs in Boise. 2022, this is where it starts to take off. 2,367 sales and 1,100 network installs. 2023, 4,687 sales, 2,300 network installs. 2024, 11,177 sales. We're pacing currently in 2024 for 15,000 installs and 6,500 network installs pacing. 2025 goals, 25,000 sales and 12,000 network installs. Personal life. Chris is married with 2 daughters. He lives in Boise, Idaho. He's a hunter and a golfer and a wannabe pilot, which we just talked about, and obviously an investor. So you own 14 doors?
14 doors.
Chris, man, welcome to the show.
Dude, thanks for having me, man. This is good.
That is a dope. I've heard a few other guys like Casey. They have these amazing intros like that. So it's a tremendous career, man. Just reading through that, and I love. We'll get into this, but I want to talk about going from 65 alarms up. So we always start with just a little personal introduction, man. Tell me a little bit about growing up, teen years. What did that look like?
Yeah, so grew up Western Washington, small town called Longview. I come from a really good family, like great parents, great siblings. Dad's an engineer. My mom has held a variety of jobs over the years, but yeah, really stable family, really conservative, financially very non-risk takers. If you talk to my dad, just prototypial engineer, work his 35 years and retire, that was kind of his thing.
American dream.
Yeah, exactly. Living the American dream. And played a lot of sports growing up, basketball, soccer, played those sports throughout high school. Just a good upraising, really thankful for my family. I think a lot of people in this job come from really poor background, and that's kind of their chip on their shoulder. But I was blessed with just great parents. They're still together today, super supportive, and just a really good childhood.
What were some of the main lessons you learned from your dad?
Man, tons of stuff. I think, naturally there's that conservative financial side that was always instilled early on. I can still remember going to the gas station, dad filling up the car and being like, hey, just remember that cost, at the time, $25-$30 to fill up a gas tank. And, you better go get a good job. You got to be thinking about these things early on. And so I think that's always been something that's been really part of me is just very aware of finances, very aware of, kind of what I'm getting myself into. There was always a side of me that growing up, I was so obsessed with, wanting to have financial freedom. I remember being third, fourth grade, listening to like Dave Ramsey books as a third or fourth grader, going to bed, and like just that desire to be in a different position long term. But yeah, like, for my parents, I think, the strong values and taking care of other people, my parents just really, really engaged with our lives. Like, as busy as they were, still committed to like taking us to soccer practices nonstop and being there at every school play, and
emotionally involved.
Yeah, super emotionally involved. And so I think that's the biggest thing. Like, I look at my parents and they're just, just great people. And so for me, the biggest lessons were just giving it your all. Like, I think today, I always look back, like, I think today it's so popular to be like the guy who's like waking up early, goes running every morning, works out every single morning, takes his cold shower. And like, my dad was doing that stuff before it was cool. And it wasn't something to share with other people. It's just like, that was just part of who he is.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably the biggest thing is just the work ethic.
I love that, man. So teenage years were obviously good, family. What kind of led you, what age did you get towards doors? So let me just look at this history.
Yeah.
This is a badass history. So 2014, it looks like, was your first year on door. No, actually
2011. 2010 I signed. 2011 was my first summer, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I was started in 2016, but with Vivint, it was October 1 was the fiscal year. So it was 2017 was my first year.
Yeah.
So 2010-11, Apex Vivint. Where were you living? What is the look on that? What pulls you in?
So whole life, like, my plan was go do kind of what my dad did, just get a traditional job. I was actually interested in working for the FBI at the time. And so went to Boise State, moved from Western Washington to Boise, went to Boise State. And my freshman year, good friend Eric Chatterton, he got into working on the doors. He started with Jason Newby, Tyler McAllister. Owners Tyler's the owner.
He's old school, man.
Yeah. So Newby lived in Boise. Tyler McAllister, the owner of Fusion in Arizona, lived in Boise, and so they recruited Eric to go out to for the summertime. I was like too reluctant. I was like, man, it seems like too much. Seems something I don't want to do.
Risky.
Like, hey, you go out, you try it, you let me know how it goes. So he went out that first summer, he crushed it. He came back, and it's like the same story everybody has, where like came back, was buying everything, was the guy that's buying all the beer, like just the guy, So he was like, hey man, like you should come out. And so summer of 2011 was my first summer. He recruited me out. We went out to Santa Maria, California. And that was my very first summer. We went on a blitz in Bakersfield, California, sold smart home before they even had the cameras to install it. So that was my very first summer.
And he was just Todd was ahead of the game, man.
Oh, totally, man. I remember going out and hitting the doors on that first blitz, and I made like $2,000 that first week, and was hooked ever since.
So that first blitz out, how many did you do? Do you remember?
I sold 5, installed 4.
Did you feel good? Were you good? Or was it like, what was the vibe for you?
I think it was beginner's luck in a lot of ways. Like, you don't know what you don't know. I remember knocking my first door and hoping they didn't answer, right? You knock at the door, or then the next door you finally get in, you look at their alarm panel, you panic because you don't know what to do. So you're like, get me out of this house. So there was a lot of that going on. And the interesting thing is like, I actually had a ton of success that first blitz, right? I wasn't the guy that was struggling.
Yeah.
I go out for the summertime. That was spring break of 2011. I go out for the summertime, and
so your first blitz was spring break.
Spring break.
So it was preseason.
Preseason. Yep. Went out to Bakersfield, which was kind of everybody's kind of on the West Coast. That's where they were going for blitzes.
Bakersfield,
California.
Still got meat on the bone too.
Does it?
Yeah.
Okay. Good little shout out there for the alarm guys. I go out there, and then summertime comes around. I had all this success in the preseason. Summertime comes around. We go out to Santa Maria, California, and just get crushed for the first 3 weeks. I remember, talking to Tyler McAllister at the time, and I was like, hey, is there any way I can become a tech? Because like I'm not selling, right? And started overcomplicating the process. Didn't sell for 2.5, 3 weeks. Getting to the point where you're like, hey, I don't know if this is going to work out anymore. Like, can I be a tech? And fortunately for Tyler and Eric, then they were just hammering me. Yeah, man, hammering me like, you'll figure it out. I remember Friday, I posted on Facebook, like, couldn't sell, snow to a snowman. Next day I got a sale and just barely holding on. And then, once you got that first sale, kind of momentum, got a little traction.
That bell curve is weird, man. I mean, obviously you've dealt with thousands of reps in your career by now. But it's interesting to watch people kind of go through that bell curve, and it happens. It seems to happen to everybody at some point in their career. I remember my first year, 2017, I was National Rookie of the Year for Vivint. My first week I sold 7 alarms, and we were in the GM program too. So I installed 213 my first year, but it wasn't a year-round program.
Yeah,
where other guys were in the summer. So I think I had a leg up on that. But I was 40. But I remember that it was the next year that I really went into a dip where I had a couple months where my goal was always, trying to hit 20. It's unrealistic a lot of the time where I'd, get at 213. But I remember that second year getting into like a 2-month dip where my bell curve was later. But I remember having thoughts like it was all luck.
Yeah.
It couldn't have been real. Nobody buys any, literally having conversations and getting talked out of. At that time I was in office with John Taylor and Vivint. And just having conversations with leadership where they're like, you need to get check back into reality. And it's a weird thing that people go through spiritually. And I've actually seen people commit rep suicide where they get into that and they just can't seem to find their way out of it. And I know you have the talent. I just can't get you checked into it. So
for sure. Yeah, man. I mean, I think those first years especially were so tough because, financially you're in a tough spot, right? Most guys, especially that age, they come out and I remember on the way out to area, I had $200 in my bank account, and I was like, okay, well, I need to stop at the store and get shorts, knocking shorts, and I need to get some shirts. So that's going to cost me $100. So I got about $100 to my name to really figure this thing out. And so, I mean, there's a lot of pressure to really figure it out. And, but yeah, man, those first years are even still, I reminisce on the guys, the area, the challenges.
Yeah. So in those 2010 to 2013, what brings you from Vivint over to DishOne Caliber?
Oh man, it's a good question. So spent, 2 years at Vivint, 2 summers, and then an off season at Vivint. Had a great experience. I think what's so unique about that, I love holding on to that because I was really there. I felt like in the heyday, I really got to see what, is the pinnacle of security and door to door, right? And a lot of people look back at it. You talk to these big names, the Casey Boss, the Jeff Mendez of the world.
There was a lot of weight happening.
A ton of guys. I remember going to Tony Robbins at Vivint, and I just thought that was a normal door to door company, what everyone's doing this, right?
It's not.
But you look back now and you're like, that's incredible, So was there, for me, I always, especially early on, it was always this means to an end. It's gonna be a short term thing. Mm-hmm. So a couple of years at Vivint, and I was like, hey, I want to finish my degree. So that summer came. I was a few credits behind, so I was going to take summer school. So I was like, hey, I'm not going to go out for the summertime. I'm going to finish my degree. Guy by the name of Dylan Davis in Boise, Idaho, hit me up while I was in Boise. He was like, hey, while you're going to school, you can also sell Dish part-time. Guys are making good money doing it.
What are you in school for?
Criminal justice.
So when you grew up, FBI.
Yeah, that was the plan.
To be.
Yep. So that was obviously during the Great Recession. The FBI was not hiring. There was a hiring freeze, fortunately. So, so anyway, I started selling Dish in the part-time while I was going to school in the summer. And that was kind of my transition out of Vivint to DishOne at the time. Yeah. And that's kind of where it started again. I actually got out of college, finished my degree, and got an internship. I was making $18 an hour. And they fired me because I was I didn't have the attention to detail. I wasn't the guy for the job. Yeah. Terrible job sitting at a desk. And that was really when I was like, okay, I'm fully done with the corporate world. I'll never work another 9-to-5 job. I'm out and I'm going all in on this thing.
Yeah. So I'm looking at these numbers here, and that's an interesting story. I mean, I think a lot of us go through. Well, I can't say a lot of us. I went through something similar where it's. I think it's this fixed mindset though, where you have this. It's like your dad, right? He envisions this. If I can make this $60,000 or $70,000 a year and get this 401k and have these few stock market investments, and I'm going to be stable, right? Yeah. It's those leaps of fear that get people caught up. So, yeah, you make the decision, and it looks like in 2013 you got 50 installs, and then in 2014 we jumped to 428 installs. Yeah. So that was that commitment level. I'd like to hear a little bit about what changed in you, because we see this a lot, right? Where guys. I have people in the office now where I'm like, I don't really hire part-timers, but I have people that look at other things, and I'm like, if you just go all in on this, you have no idea. I'm a big timeline guy. Yeah. I look back and at the choices I've made and the places that they put me in, the hard work and the footwork and everything that it's fighting fear and anxiety to get where I'm at. And had I not done that, and I can see people's trails where I'm like, sometimes I can see 2 timelines for them. And I'm like, if you just buckle down
Yeah.
and do this thing. It might be a year, it might be 3 or 4 or 5 years, but there's opportunities that can change lives here. So this is kind of that. It sounds like that moment for you where you go from 50 installs to 400 plus. Like, what does that look like?
I think, it's funny looking back. Like, I think the most common rep mentality is like that the guys that are doing it at the highest level are somehow completely different than them. Like that they have some type of crazy skill set. And I remember that, like, shout out to Mark Dunham. Like my first summer, I was in Santa Maria and he was selling 6 to 7 alarms a day, every day.
It's insane.
Yeah, I think he was like number 4 or 5 in the company that year.
Stuff is still bananas.
Oh, it's
like,
crazy.
It's beast mode.
And I was selling maybe 1 a day. And he's selling 5, 6, 7. And I remember being like, he must be incredible. And he was good. Don't get me wrong. He was incredible.
Like a Jedi Knight.
Yeah, but then
some spectacular.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And then you actually, that to your question, like what was the transition point? It was actually spending a lot more time with some of those top guys at Dish at the time that were doing it, and it was like, man, like they're not that much different. Like they just have that extra go. That's like, hey, I got 2 deals on the day and they're going to go get the 3rd and the 4th and the 5th versus your average guy's like, hey, I've got 2 deals. I've made $600. I'm done. Right. Yeah. And I think, what a lot of guys are doing, at least what I was doing is I was quantifying the money I was making compared to the normal world, right? Like the average person. I made $600. Like, the average person makes $600 a week. So
I'm
like,
done, I'm good.
yeah, foot's off the gas.
Yeah.
So, for me, it's like that, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time around. It was like changing that mentality of like, hey, like, I'm at a different level now. I have to change who I am. I have to change my thought process and how I think about money in order to make that next step. So we spent the summer working in a really good office in Boise with just the right guys. I was working part-time, so the numbers weren't crazy. I only sold 50 Dish deals, but I was finishing college. And then that next year, 2014, was like, yeah, I really had kind of an epiphany of like, I'm capable of way more. Look what these other guys are doing. I can do the same thing. They're no different than I am. Sold a bunch of preseason accounts and then went out to Fargo, North Dakota with, co-managed a team with a buddy and we sold a bunch of accounts and I sold a bunch of accounts personally.
Yeah, it's just that it's a paradigm shift. I think, there's all these things like fall in love with the process instead of the outcome, but it really does boil down to, in my experience, like that does sound simple, but it really is as simple as that. Is when you're focused on the process continuously, the result doesn't matter because you're in the grind constantly. You're sowing the seeds constantly. So I love that, man. That's the paradigm shift that's dope. So looks like we're in, and I'm just kind of going through all this because I want to get into like where you're currently at and state of mind and like, what you pour into yourself and all that in a little bit, but this is such a dope intro. I want to walk through some of this. So you go into, it looks like you're in Dish for another year. 2015, you hit 528 installs. So obviously you're having massive success. And then we switched from there into solar. Is that right?
So ran a top team, co-managed a top team in 2014, was top rep. 2015, repeated as top sales rep at Caliber or DishOne at the time, ran a great office in Denver. At that point, I had the opportunity to step into a corporate role. Like I think for me, it's funny, like there was always this pull back to
like indoors, corporate in the company.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, there was always this pull back to like, getting a real job, right? So even at that point, it's like, hey, I've had great summers, but there was always this pull back to like, hey, get off the doors and go to like kind of a real job, which at the time I had the offer from Caliber DishOne to move into a training role. I'd had a ton of success I actually wrote a book at the time about kind of that transition that you're talking about, going from selling 58 alarms to, 500 Dish deals. So had the ability to go to step into that role. And for the next, 5-6 years, I had a variety of roles. I was a director of training for DishOne at the time, which, DishOne's not around anymore, but at the time, at the peak, we had 1,500 sales reps. We did a variety of products, stepped into a role where at one point we really wanted to bring security internal. So we partnered with ADT and we had a home security product. I ran that product for a number of years. We actually developed an intern program where we partnered with universities across the country. At one point, we had like 19 different universities all over the U.S. where we were their lead sales partner.
Yeah.
So that was great. Got a lot of experience working with universities and recruiting guys out that way. And then, other products, we had T-Mobile at the time that we sold as well. So had a variety of different roles. We produced training manuals every single year, which I think was really kind of unique for the industry, where we had a full-blown, really, really hands-on training program for both leadership and for reps.
Yeah, I think there was a lot going on back then. It was interesting. We were just talking about that interview with Casey and K-Swiss, and you hear some of this like stuff that's pioneered.
Yeah,
like, the stuff that a lot of us, like the videos, like the education that we all have now.
Yeah,
it's just like you just open it up, or even YouTube.
Right.
Where I just want to go watch so and so go sell some stuff. Like,
yep.
Yeah, the pioneering of like all of that. Like I remember my second year in Vivint, they started a deal with Sprint, and it was, but it was cell phones indoors we weren't the first one,
right?
And it's like, so guys like you back then are like pioneering.
Well, I remember that. I remember when Sprint had, because we had to deal with Sprint as well. So I remember that. Yeah,
it's weird. And those guys used to come in when we do the numbers. We wouldn't do a clap for them. We do a click.
Yeah, it's not a legit.
Like,
it's not as good as an alarm,
we'll
right?
Give you a click.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there you are, pioneering all that.
And I think the message I always send to guys is like, man, I pulled a lot from a lot of great people. Like, early on, it was, Tyler and Mark and Eric, and then, my years at Caliber, it was just tremendous leadership, just some of the best people. So spent a lot of time working with a lot of great guys there that are still there. And just learned a lot about relationships and was put into a lot of situations where I was able to pioneer things and work on my own projects and, pioneer an ADT product. Yeah, exactly. And, at one point I think we did like 3,000 or 4,000 ADT accounts that year as a side product, which was really good. We were really happy with that. So spent a lot of time there.
It's good. It's not bad. Yeah.
Yeah. As an add-on product, it was adding millions in revenue. So did that for, a number of years. And then, as everybody else, like you start hearing, this alarm or this solar bug. Yeah. And it's kind of like early on, it's kind of like you kind of ignore it, you kind of downplay it, and it got louder and louder and louder. And, probably 2019, 2020, gets to the point where it's like,
loud.
I can't ignore this anymore. Yeah. We got to really look at this.
Big.
So at the time, Caliber started a solar division. We were doing all the other products. They started a solar division, and about that time, Caliber's CEO came to me. He's like, "Hey man, you really got to figure out the solar things. I think it's going to be a big deal." And shout out to Josh Schleider, the CEO of Pros Now, but he had dove in 6 months earlier, and so a year earlier, and so
where was he at?
So he was at Caliber. He was running. Yeah, he was running.
He was with you over there.
Yes. So he was at the point. At that time, he was an SVP. He was running, one of the largest divisions at Caliber, doing Dish mainly. And then he saw the opportunity in solar in a huge way, and he dove all in. He converted all of his guys from Dish guys to solar guys. Super rocky time. Like, how
many guys was it?
I'll bet he converted 300 guys or so to solar.
That's a lot.
And at the time, we weren't a solar company, right?
Yeah,
and so it's like, his guys were getting picked off left and right because we couldn't figure out things quite fast enough. But man, he hung in there and really built it up. Fast forward to 2021, really saw the power of solar. I hadn't really been on the doors full time in like 5-6 years. But I saw the opportunity and just, started self-chatting. I was like, I got to figure this thing out. I really think I can bring a lot of value if I figure this thing out. And, I had a lot of experience doing that previously with my big years previous. And so, I jumped on the doors, was just in Boise by myself, self-genning, learning the product, learning how to sell it, trying to figure out a way to bring a lot of value.
Everything. Yeah. There's so much. I mean, with solar, there's, the setting, the closing, the pipeline.
Yeah.
It's more laborious for sure.
Yeah. So summer of 21, I'm still doing all the same stuff with ADT. I was running that program, still doing some stuff with T-Mobile, but I started, self-genning solar on the side full time.
So in 21, when you did 65 installs, you still were working.
I was still working.
Another job.
Yeah.
Full-time job.
Full-time job. Yeah. Yeah. I would go out like at 5:00 and get a couple sets. And, similar to you, like my bread and butter was like, I was a door knocker first, right? So I had that skill to go, like setting was easier as part of the game. So
it becomes the easiest when you look back, like, guys, when they're on doors now, that's like, it's hard, but it's like, you get to a point where that's functionally, mechanically, that's one of the easiest jobs there are.
Yeah.
It feels hard until it's not. And then you get to a point where there's so many other roles and responsibilities that it's, and that's one of the things I've always relied on in my career to help me get away from stress and anxiety. Is like, just thing, if you just drop me off in a neighborhood with a Polo and a phone and a product,
go get after it.
I'm good. Yeah. So I love that.
Yeah. And I think too, like now there's so many guys that we're recruiting now that like they never did doors. They were just a closer, right? So they actually don't have any strength on the doors.
Yeah. Which is Interesting.
Crazy, right? So we come from a product same as you, where it's like, dude, everybody was setting close. It was like you're just a sales rep, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, produced a lot of accounts in 21 personally, and then at that time I was on the corporate side. Going into like July.
So who's your partner? What's his name again?
Cam Gray.
So
Cam Gray.
you just went in as a rep. Like
Yeah.
you're Cam? Like
Yeah,
he's been
so-
in for 6 months.
So Cam had,
and you're like, I got to see what's going on here.
yeah, so Cam had previously been running the largest region at Caliber. So the time he had, 90, 100 sales reps just doing Dish, crushing it, had a tremendous career previous to that. We'd always had a really good relationship. We'd worked really closely on the intern program. I was on the kind of the corporate side. He was on the, the sales rep side or the regional side. And at that point, like we had sat down and we're like, man, I really think there could be something here with solar. Like we should look at partnering up. I think we've got a lot of skills that complement each other. So at that time, I knew solar really well, and he was kind of still focused on Dish. And so August of 21, we're like, hey, let's start working together. Let's partner up. And at that point, I transitioned out of kind of the corporate side back full time into running a network.
Yeah, because you go to 119 installs in 2022.
Yeah.
Which is strong. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, I mean that first year.
Self-gens?
Yeah, self-gens, some leads, a combination. But that first year, like our main focus was we've got to go show what's possible.
Yeah. Gotta be the rabbit.
Yeah, we had all these guys that had done Dish, and Cam had done such a terrific job with growing great culture and great reps, but not a single one of them knew how to sell solar. So both of us that first year, he hadn't been on the doors in a long time. I hadn't been on the doors in a long time. It was like, we've got to go show these guys what's possible.
Was he on doors with you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So,
That's
I mean,
banging.
we were taking, 14-day blitzes to Pensacola, Florida, and 50, he was in Boise that summer, I think 50 days straight.
Yeah.
So, that summer, first summer, we had 2 offices. We had an office or 3 offices. We had a Boise office and then an office in Houston, Dallas. And yeah, again, our main focus was let's just go tell a great story. Let's help guys make great money, and we'll grow out from there.
So this is the story of the birth of Solar Pros.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
This is how Solar Pros was born.
Yeah. So
It
that's
was 2 guys that were door knockers that had gone internal that decided they needed to get into solar and went out and banged doors for a couple of years to prove that it could be done.
yeah, man.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah,
That's a good birth story.
that first summer, 2022, we're partnered up. We get to the end of the summer. Josh Slider, who's the CEO of Pros, he was a division. We weren't even in his division at Caliber. He had met with Brett, the CEO of Brett Bushy, the CEO of Freedom. And, Brett really had a different vision about...
Has Pros always been a Freedom dealer?
No. So, well, yeah, it always has. So a big part of Pros was at Caliber originally.
Got it.
So Slider was running a division, him and Justin Gosselin, our COO, they had kind of pioneered the idea of like, hey, is there a direct alignment partnership we can have with Freedom where we can do a lot of things more efficiently and better than we're doing right now?
Yeah.
And, early on, we met with Josh and Justin, and they kind of gave us this vision of what things could be. And yeah, we, September of 2022, we founded Pros.
Yeah.
So
What were you saying about Brett's vision?
yeah, I mean, Brett, if you've ever sat down with him, I've been around a lot of leaders, and I think
Heard he's very dynamic.
he's very dynamic and he's a visionary. Like there's a lot of people that think, today and tomorrow in solar, but Brett is really looking at things 10, 15 years, 20 years down the line. So, we sat down with him, like his vision and his energy and kind of where he saw things going was just so magnetic. He talked about, hey, we want to align with a sales force. We see what's coming in the future with all these dealers that are selling bad business. We see what's coming in the future with all this regulation. We want to be ahead of that. And, something about that attracted me to where, it wasn't just about how can I make the most money. It was like, hey, how can we make a difference? How can we just change the experience the sales reps having?
Yeah.
And that for me was really magnetic. And, even though at the time, like, none of the things we could see in the future kind of were even visible yet, he told us, like, the person that aligns with us, the person that understands that passing the most money down to the sales rep or the maximum money down to the sales rep, the person that buys into alignment and the future of this industry is going to have the most success. We bought into that really early, and it's paid dividends for us.
Yeah. I think like it's been interesting to watch the last couple of years transpire in our industry. The guys, I think, we talked about a lot of these consolidations happening. I think the guys that were, that money was their first or second priority that they needed to have.
Yeah.
They're starting to dissipate.
Totally.
We're starting to see that where people had, it was, I was talking about culture on one of my threads today. It's like, I don't know if you know Damon Price, but Damon Price from Vivint did this really cool thing on culture back in 2017 that's always stuck with me. But it's, culture's like, it's a group of people that are aligned with the same vision, the same belief system, right? I mean, we talk education, self-betterment, making people better, investing in other people, like people who are invested in that, like true culture, and people who have alignment. The money is, when you develop enough people, the money is almost guaranteed.
It's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct.
Yeah.
And when you're like, what you're talking about is like investing in a vision of culture where people are aligned in a long-term vision. And I've seen a lot of like the really short-term visions where, and not to talk bad about Titan now that they're gone, all these guys, they're so focused on these red lines and how much they could capitalize on a per instead of like, what's the long-term? And you start to see, we talked about the number of companies that went underwater just in Vegas. And
Yeah.
we've seen, and a lot of those things, I feel like a lot of people shot the golden goose. When they were doing that, a lot of these EPCs that were extraordinarily construction-centric and didn't know how to recruit were recruiting based on those really low red lines.
Yeah.
And there was no culture, there was no vision, there was no sales ability, there was no tech. It was just like, we just give you this.
Right.
And, they're running with a 5 or 7% margin, and the wind blows and the banks change, and then the banks, start losing tens of millions of dollars on each one of these EPCs. I heard, I'm not gonna go into names and people who have lost, but tens of millions of dollars per EPC, and then banks start changing where they're funding and they're financing, and now all these reps that had all those red lines are now merging into the companies who are stable, and they're finding, oh wow, pay's different now too. The way banks are funding, because they don't trust everyone as much, and sometimes M1s and M2s, and it's like they shot the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yep.
Because they were so driven by the short-term vision.
For sure.
And we're in the aftermath of that now.
Yeah, and I think that was something that really attracted us to Brett was, he said, we are looking for a partner who's going to align with us through the good and the bad.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like a marriage, man. It's like anything else. It's like, dude, things are not always going to be good. Freedom's not, or whatever company you're working for is never going to be the best in every market.
Can't.
Yeah, it's impossible. There's always going to be a niche where someone else can be better, right?
Always.
And so, I think for us, it was like, I understood that. Cam understood that. Josh and Justin, just, incredible leaders. They understood that. And we try to pass that on to our guys all the time. It's like, our goal is to create the best opportunity overall. We're not going to be the best everywhere.
It's not possible.
It's not possible. And so, they said, hey, we're looking for someone who's going to be with us, come hell or high water, good or bad. And here's where we're going. Here's what we've achieved. And so we got on board with that. And Brett said, the leaders that are willing to pass down the most margin, the leaders that are the most selfless, the leaders that are willing to stick themselves, kind of out there and do some things that, other companies do the opposite of what a lot of these other companies are doing, are going to be the ones that do really well in the next 3 years. Yeah. So, yeah, at the time, that's what we did, and it's really, really paid off.
So you guys have been in operation for about 3 years?
Pros is just at 2 years right now. So that first year was actually with Caliber.
Yeah.
Finished that year 2021 with Caliber, and then 2022, September 22 is really when Pros launches.
How many megawatts installed Pros last year?
Oh gosh, I'd have to look. Yeah. I mean, last year we finished with close to 30,000 sales. I think we ended up installing. I can't remember what we installed. We were really summer heavy, so ended up installing close to 10,000 deals, something like that.
That's good luck.
Yeah.
And this year you're beating it?
Yeah. This year our goal is 60,000 sales.
Not bad.
Yeah. So
not bad for 3 years.
Yeah, man. It's been huge, and I think it's just been willingness to do different things, and again, that alignment. Like, that's the thing that's changed everything. Everything about Pros is focused on alignment. Yeah. And having a close partnership with Freedom. I mean, Freedom has thought differently from the beginning, and so that's what's really propelled us.
So for you with guys, I mean, one of the things that, obviously I follow Pros. I'm a student of the game. On Instagram and some of the different social media. And I saw you do a post, and you were, I'm going to butcher your quote, but essentially what you were saying, you were at a retreat somewhere, And you were, because I really align with this as a leader myself. I feel like, including myself, my teams are capped at what I am as a human being, all the way around. The whole person paradigm, my mental, spiritual, physical abilities are the cap of my recruiting abilities, my leadership abilities, what I can teach, what I can give. And on a down chain, I see different people in my orgs and the industry, like each of us have different orgs, and you can, with different leaders in different, you can have two leaders in one city that are completely dynamically different.
Yep.
And one person will pour into themselves and one person just kind of marinates.
Yep.
And so what I resonated with was, you were talking about that you are the cap of your team. You're the lid, right? And it's like you go into law number 1 with, law of the lid.
Yep.
Right. So like for you, as personally for you, like what does like evolution look like for you in the industry? I mean, I think we get a lot of that from, your door knocking, going into Dish, going into the corporate world of Dish. I experienced a lot of that with the dealer program, where just running a dealer was immensely different than, being on a team at Legacy, where Legacy's handling a ton of that stuff.
Yep.
We operated all of that, and that gave me a massive amount of knowledge. But for you, like, what does that path to progression look like as a human?
Yeah, man, I think it's an it's a quest, right? It's a never ending quest. Yeah. I think, that's something that, especially the last 2 years more than ever, we've doubled down on. And this year, this 2025, it's our main priority. It's going to be a 10X focus on personal development. In that video or in that clip, I was talking to one of our regions and just telling the guys, it starts with you guys. Like, your guys are never going to do more than you do. We call it half-ass, quarter-ass. Your guys are never going to do, more than half of what you do as a leader. And that's in every realm of life. That's in personal sales. That's in, in your physical life. That's in your religious life. In every paradigm, your guys are just never going to do more than you are. Right. And if they do, they're going to leave. Right. They're going to, if they feel like they're capped because their leaders, incapable, they're going to leave. And so, that's, you talk to these guys that have been there, done that at Vivint, or these guys, that come before both of us. Like, that's really what made the difference, was the personal development. Once a lot of things are in the right spot, you have to keep growing these guys. Like, they need more than just a good paycheck. And so our focus has become obviously the self-development, but it's more than just self-development. It's helping guys be intelligent with what they're doing with their money. It's helping guys make long-term plans. It's helping guys understand the industry beyond just what it's like to be a sales rep. And I think the more of that knowledge that we give to them, they just think differently. They make different decisions, and they plan accordingly, and they think bigger. And that's what it's all about, is like, that's what I've learned more than anything. It's the ability to think bigger. Going back to my first year, it's like, I just didn't have that ability at that time. And even now, I have to force myself to think bigger. We've done great things, and we're going to do great things in the future, but challenging yourself to continue to change that identity of who you are today is not who you're going to become tomorrow. And if I want to become what I want to become, I've got to change how I view myself and kind of where the goalpost is.
Yeah, I love that. There was a lot in there. I love that. I remember my first year, two things. One of the things was what I wanted, what I expected. And the other thing was meeting guys like, Casey and Jeff would fly down. I had Todd fly down my first couple of years at Vivint. My first year, I remember I wanted to make $110,000.
Yeah.
Because I was in the transportation industry. I was in sales. I would sell corporate transportation, concierge desks and stuff like that. And Uber and Lyft had come into Vegas, and that's I was 40. Justin Mott, I think he's with you guys now. You know Justin.
Yeah, I know Justin.
Justin was an interesting story. So Justin worked with me at the limo company.
Okay.
He quit and he went and did, I think, air conditioners, sold air conditioners for a minute, and then ended up meeting JT from Vivint through somehow, and he started selling alarms. And I know Justin. We were poking around, went to, we'd see each other, and he always have his checks on his phone. He'd be like, check out this.
Yeah.
Like, bro, I'm not, I got a car and gas. And he's like, I'll come check out. I'm like, no. And then when Uber and Lyft came into Vegas, it really, for me, corporate transportation was who uses a lot of transportation all at once? Concierge desks, destination management companies. And Uber and Lyft solved a lot of those problems for those people where it just dynamically changed the entire landscape of transportation in Vegas instantly. It was like a landslide. And I'm like, I need to make 110 grand. So I go to Joe's Stone Crab with Justin and John Taylor. And like,
man, that place is like everyone's.
It's everyone's,
yeah.
you know, and Justin, he's got his blue eyes and he's like, yeah, I just walk up and I just open this and this is an app and it's the doorbell. And I say, you want the doorbell, right? And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, they give me a new homeowner route. And I'm like, you just go on a route and they give you, and he's like, yeah, I chase dots. And I'm like, what's a dot? And he shows me like Spotio or something.
Yeah.
And he's like, and I'm like, and Justin, bro, I don't know if you've ever seen Justin. Justin is a goat on doors. He's a phenom. He's one of those dudes, like he shouldn't even do training because you can't emulate the dude.
Yeah.
It's impossible. It's his personality, right? So, you know, and there's John Taylor and he's like, yeah, you can do this. And I'm like, I can do this. And I went home just feeling like I can do this. And it, you know, looking back on that, I have just such immense gratitude, but it changed my life for the rest of my life. But my initial goal was make 110 grand because that's what I had made. That's as big as I could see.
Right.
That was my entire vision. And I remember being in this office here in Vegas over on like Jones and Sahara. And it had like, you know, the tile carpet. And like in different places, it's like rolling up. And there's this shitty ping pong table.
Yep.
And all the tech gear is behind like this cage so nobody steals it. The bathroom's filthy. And we, in the GM program, they called us SEAL Team 6. We had some hitters. Justin was a hitter. I was instantly a hitter. We had Pat Mendez, Jeremy Moriello. We just had a bunch of really dope dudes. I think David Prince is with you guys now. He was there back then. He's always, you know, just been in the game. But Casey would come in, and he's just talking about, like, I had never heard a human being. I had never, you know, I had read books on, like, I like history.
Yep.
Like, you know, I had read that stuff and stuff, you know, all that. But I had never read self-development or or like abundance or anything like that. And, you know, here comes Casey and he's talking, here comes Jeff and Todd comes down and we go to these things at Vivint. And then just like, it was amazing to hear people talk about this other almost universe outside of this fixed mindset. Because I'm like, yeah, I got to take my 401k and like move it to somewhere else so I can, and then I got to like try and pay my house, or I'm going to try and pay a house off or a car off.
Yep.
Like, and those two things collided in like my second year where I just really started like, and it was like you said, I mean, Casey read books, so I read books.
Yep.
Jeff read books, so I read books.
Yep.
John Taylor read books, so I read books. Everybody in the office knocked 8, 9, 10 hours a day. We knocked on Saturday. We knocked 6 days a week. So that's just what I did because I just felt like that was normal.
It was the bar.
It was the bar. Like, you're not going to go to Casey and he's like, what book are you reading? And I'm like, oh,
yeah,
that's not a good look.
Like an idiot.
It's like, so what you're talking about is like, I think when you come from some of that, and I believe that I institute a lot of that, but it is representing that as a human being is like actually showing people, you know, when you get in these recruiting meetings with guys that are outside of the industry, and it's that same thing. It's that fixed mindset. And
for sure,
man, if I could just get enough time with you, I can change that paradigm and show you like life is so abundant. There's so much abundance, man. So I love that.
No, man, you nailed it. Like there's just, and I think the more removed you are from spending time with people who are not in this, like when you spend a lot of time with guys like you or just anybody in general that's in the space, which we do, and then you spend time with someone who's like running the normal corporate life.
A really hard time.
It's really hard. It's like, man, you don't even know you're capable of so much more.
A lot of times I don't even know what to say. You feel like you feel like you're telling them a make-believe story.
Totally.
Because I don't know how to talk outside of like
totally.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, the self-development thing, it's real work. That's the biggest thing. Like I tell guys and that we try to preach is it's not just like read a book. There's more to it than that, right? It's really looking at yourself deeply and asking the tough questions, right? Where are my weaknesses? Where am I missing the boat? So it really is invasive and it feels like you're cutting yourself open sometimes.
Yeah, it does. So recruiting, like, because it's the industry's out there. Like, what are your favorite parts about recruiting? What do you think is important about recruiting? Like, and just let me give you a little so for me, like I've gone through different stages in recruiting. Yeah. Initially in my first, couple years, rookie stuff is money and then it's value. But I initially would have, I remember years ago, like almost recruiter's guilt. Like if you don't make it, I'm so worried about you. And then I kind of surpassed that. And I say, as long as I have the input, the right platform, the right tech, the right input to put into you, and like I'll put as much into you And there's a lot of things that I believe in recruiting, but what's important to you in recruiting people, like humans?
Yeah.
Like, what do you look for?
I think we're looking for always you're looking for the right guys. Like, I think what's so unique about this space is, people are always trying to pinpoint, like, what's the right, like, who am I looking for? It's like, this is no bullshit. I've seen guys, the most unlikely guys have success. And as you probably seen too, the guys that you absolutely think will crush it, fall on their face, right?
Jim.
Yeah.
Look.
Totally. And they can't do it. Right. And so, I think for us, like, we're doing a lot of recruiting outside of new guys, but we're also spending, especially this year, like, we're spending a tremendous amount of energy on developing our current guys and just organic growth. But when it comes to, recruiting, I think, just looking for that it factor, like we picked up, a couple guys from actually I got two different groups. One group from a very small company out of Boise. Shout out to Caden and Logan. But you can tell when they have grit, right? And they've got that it factor, and they've been trying to grow something with limited means. So I think a lot of what I spend my time doing is looking for guys that are doing it the right way, doing it, that have that grit, but maybe don't have the resources to take it to the next level. And, we've picked up, probably some of our best pickups have been guys like that, where they're hungry, they want it, they're just not in the right vehicle. So, I look at, like, I compare a lot of how we try to recruit with how, Boise State recruits, Boise State football. Like, they're never going to get your 5-star recruits, right? They're never going to focus on those guys. Those guys are going to go to USC and Alabama. But what they do really good job of is finding kind of those guys that come from the smaller schools that are overlooked, the diamonds in the rough. And I feel like those are the guys that we try to focus on, because they just end up being a better fit. They've got that grit.
I love that, man, because it's weird and I just love having this open conversations. It's weird because it seems like there's two types of people. There's the person that almost overvalues who they are and what they've done and what they've created. Yep. And they come in with these, asks and this, like, crazy nonsense. Preconceived notion. And it's like, and you can invest in them mentally, spiritually, sometimes financially, and it's just shit. And you're like, you're just not anything. Totally. It's like a false sale. And there's these, I like what you said. It's a really good way to think about it, because there's other people that just don't have the means and the resources. Yep. And they're like, and that's when I came out of the dealer program. I really relate to that, because that's what it was like for me. I got to about 4 megawatts of installations, and my wife is my business partner. She's an absolute monster on installs, or not installs, on operations. But between the two of us, we had an operations manager. We were paying for our own solo and our own this and that. And it's like, I couldn't see a way past 4 megawatts, because I'm like, mentally and spiritually, I'm stretched. Like, we're on vacations on the beach on laptops, like doing payroll, just like buried, man. And it was like, for me, going over legacy was a really simple transition. And I feel like those are less rare now, as opposed to, because it's tricky, because there's guys and they're like, oh, this, and a lot of them seem like they have problems. And to me, it's just a call out, like, if you're going somewhere, don't overvalue, like, don't oversell yourself, like, be who you really are. For sure. It's going to come out, man. It's like, I feel like it always comes out and you're like, oh, that sucks. And
those are the best pickups. I mean, we've had misses. Like, we took shots on this year on just the wrong group. Like, there's one group specific I can think of, just the wrong, and we kind of felt it. Yeah. And then, you look at the groups that really work out, and they're the groups that, you spend almost no money on. They're humble. They're ready to go. Out the gates, they sell, 30 deals their first month.
They just want to come to work.
They just want to come to work.
Yeah.
And that's what we're looking for, like, just the right guys. Because those guys, we will take them and we will pour our souls in them and
turn 30 into 60.
Build them into gladiators.
Yeah, 100%.
It's the guys that, are reminiscent, or they're talking about 5 summers ago or 5 years ago what they did, right?
Yeah. What'd you do? Well, pull it up this year. What have you done this year?
Right. What have you done this year?
Let me see this year.
Exactly.
We're in July, September or August. Show me what we've done now.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing. I think recruiting this year, we've had a ton of tailwinds. Just a lot of excitement, a lot of energy, and it's been contagious. So we've done really well.
Well, in 3 years, right?
Yeah, 2 years. Pros with 2 years now.
Where are you at on headcount in 2 years? I mean, because for me, like, I'm a student of the game. I love, like, you guys have had some pretty explosive growth. And I mean, you have, Pros has a unique platform. It's a good platform. You have great branding, and it's attraction. I've seen a lot of people move over to pros from all different areas.
Yep.
What is you guys' headcount right now?
So pros as a whole probably has, in the neighborhood of 6,000 reps active. That's a different question, right? You're probably, 60% of that. Our division Evolve, we have, 2,000 sales reps, probably 12 to 1,300 active realistically. We have, we've got six, 7-ish regions, full regions right now within Evolve. We just had our all hands on deck call today, and it's exciting, man. We have a lot of groups that started with us last year, and they did they're well over 100% growth this year. So the company is growing immensely and with the right people, and I think right now we're playing catch up with now that we're big and real and legitimate. It's like, okay, let's kind of fill the gaps with kind of some of the stuff that we were running really fast on that now we're coming back and kind of cleaning up a little bit. So
it's business, right? When people, I think, and this is for even, first year, nothing's ever going to be perfect.
For
when
sure.
you're engaged in business, to me, the way that I've always, I own a roofing company here. I've obviously done this business. We do real estate, but it's like, just lace up.
Yep.
And just go in and do the thing.
Yep.
And then there's stuff that's going to come up that you can, I think people are so worried about decorating the house.
Totally.
Get the foundation laid and just go in and get to work.
And that's what, if you talk to Josh Slider or Justin, that's probably what I've learned from those guys more than anything is just let's just go sell a ton, and everything else will figure itself out eventually, right?
It makes lots of money.
Yeah, and it's like we'll get there. And that was really our plan. Is we're gonna go out. Year one, our goal is gonna be 30,000 sales, and we got dang close. I think we hit 29,000 sales last year as a company. 10,000 installs, and that was number one focus. And now everything else, to your point, it'll catch up. We'll fix those things. We'll get them figured out. We'll patch those holes. We'll get the marketing dialed in. But let's just start with producing a lot of accounts. It wasn't let's go get a bunch of buildings. Let's let's operate with minimal employees
some stuff.
And we'll figure it out. So
I love that. So what do you think about what's your take on the last? And really since COVID, right? We saw the initially it was don't knock doors, and then everybody went out and started knocking doors. But then it was product was hard to get a hold of. Panels, inverters, backing systems, right? And then that kind of comes back, and then banking, and then 0.99s and 199s, and 26 goes to 36, and here comes PPAs, and all of a sudden, and Sonova, love Sonova. They're,
tough spot right now.
Picky, and they're tough, right? There's a lot going on where you start to see, Goodleap takes a massive hit. You see some of these banks going out of business. It's some situations, what's your take on, and you have guys out. I just was meeting with one of my guys, and he's like, it's, what's the industry? I'm like, the industry's fine. We're not going to stop selling solar power plants anytime soon. It's electricity. It's what is the consolidation look like? What is the future? So what's your take on the last couple of years in the future?
I think one of the advantages that we have with our leadership, at pros, our leaders are really good guys. But they're really experienced. They've seen kind of the cycle. I think about solar, kind of I think about the economy, right? There's just kind of these ebbs and flows. And if you know the economy, there's been
business.
Yeah. And you watch the economy and it goes like this, right? There's
stock market.
Exactly. Right. There's years of recession every so often. And so I think, for us, we have the experience of having seen that go through on the satellite side, having seen that on the security side. I remember going back 6, 7, 8 years ago where, you go online and all you see is people hating on Vivint, right? And you see about,
little Facebook things.
Yeah, all the Facebook stuff, and everybody was chasing the multiple. How big of a multiple can you get?
Yeah.
And that was the same exact trend with Redlines, And so
it's true.
I think for us, that experience of having seen all of that really kind of it gives us a leg up on a lot of these new startup companies. Or
I think right now is like the worst time to start it.
oh man, I can't,
like
couldn't be worse. Yeah. Like
No.
there's just so much consolidation. And I do agree. Like, I think that there's going to be a couple big companies that are going to, and you're already seeing that. Like a lot of these little companies have gone out of business. There's going to be a couple big companies that self-regulate, that have the right systems in place, that, are in a safe spot from a cash flow perspective. And so, and have alignment. Like you see that with Legacy, you see that with Sunrun, and you see that with, I think with Pros. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot of turmoil, but I think, the future is going to be regulation. The future is going to be doing business the right way. The future is going to be better salesmanship and less of this like throwing money in there. And so, we tell our guys like, we have no idea how long it's going to be this good. Take advantage of the opportunity now and be comfortable with the fact there's going to be changes, and be comfortable with the fact that net metering is going to go away and you're going to sell more batteries, and you're going to have to be a better salesman today than you were 2 years ago.
Yeah. It's like mortgages, though. I mean, I have a guy out in Sac, Kev, and he was in the mortgage industry for a long time before.
Great example.
Solar. And, he was talking about, we were having a similar discussion. He was talking about the regulations that happen in the mortgage industry.
Yeah.
Where in 2008, it was like just kind of a free for all.
Yep.
And that's basic. And what happened was all of those they shot the goose that laid the golden egg.
Yeah.
And I read a pretty serious class action lawsuit with one of a group that had joined together. I'm not going to name their name, but it's a 99-page lawsuit, and it is just an indictment of everything that's wrong in solar, from like illicit stuff on social media, bad practices, to doors, to like not explaining tax credits properly and people not getting, and it's just this indictment of like the negativity in solar, and the industry's done it to itself. And you're starting to see attorney generals across the nation file class action lawsuits.
Yeah.
In Nevada, obviously, we have you have to be a W-2.
Yep. Washington now is W-2.
And I think at some point, like, what wouldn't surprise me, and it's hard when you're making the government regulate something, because they don't. I was just watching, they changed the thing on real estate agents nationally, where now the buyer doesn't pay the sellers, right? And I was listening to a real estate agent on YouTube just to explain how that was kind of whack, because what it does is it actually sets the people with lower class finances up for failure, because now the person who's buying the house that doesn't have as much money is either asking the buyer to fund their agent, and if they won't, they have to pay it. So it's like when you make the government get in, the same in Nevada, the solution that they came up wasn't really the solution. What we needed was if you just have to get a license, and that license is tracked from every solar company.
Right.
So if you sell bad solar at one company, it's tracked to the other company, so you can't just bounce.
Right.
It's consumer protection, and I think we all agree on it. But because of all these negative sales practices, I wouldn't be surprised at some point if we got a cap on PPWs. I mean, they come in and say, hey, top 2.9, welcome to the party. And you're like, oh, shit.
Well, it's funny, and this is something that, again, this is what allured us, or what really pulled us to Brett and Freedom was, Freedom's had PPW caps in place for a year almost in certain markets. Now, it's not 2.9, obviously, but they look at the utility costs in the area, and they want to make sure that the rep is doing right by the customer, no matter what. And then they can sit in front of a customer and prevent, those kinds of like bad examples.
It's forward thinking.
Yeah. And that again, that's, our goal is to be a part of something that's not just 1 year. This is not a get rich quick scheme for us. This is a long-term opportunity that, we think is going to last a long time. So, but I agree. I think, with Washington, and we just went through that. We have a huge group in Washington.
What happened in Washington?
It's W-2. It's W-2 only now.
W-2, same as here.
So our setters and closers are both W-2. Same exact thing.
Setters
and closers. Oof. Yep. So it's a transition. You know that better than anybody.
Yeah,
so
I just talked to a DM from Sunrun here, and not to, they have their own model, but they went into, they insurance and because they have, their retail models where they're doing a lot of that anyway. And they took guys into like a full W-2 situation. I was like, it's drastic, but it's like, people are pivoting to setters and closers. That would be tough. That would be tough.
It's a change, man. They're crushing, they're kicking butt still, but it's a change all of a sudden when you have to onboard every single guy to be a W-2, which means they have to have the same benefit program that a Freedom corporate employee has, right?
That's what Sunrun was saying. Yeah.
So it's different, man. But again,
they run all self-gen closers.
Okay.
That's what their model is.
There you go.
Everybody's just a
rep.
Yeah.
But no, man, we've tried to embrace that stuff, and we've tried to understand, with we've tried to have a different perspective than just a sales rep. We've tried to understand that from a business perspective, there's exposure in different areas, and we've got to be ahead of that stuff. So
vision, man. Yeah,
100%.
So how do you guys? That's an interesting question. In your division, so you have 6 regions in your division.
Yeah, I think it's actually seven regions. But
what does that cover for you?
So we've got, a lot of places. I think we're in 7. I think we've got guys in 17 total states. So we've got, Washington. We're really
you have
heavy.
A region with multiple states, obviously.
Yeah. We're really probably our biggest markets are Washington, Illinois, Arizona, Montana, Idaho.
Sam Gilpin up there with you?
Yeah, Sam's in our.
You know Sam?
Sam's in our division.
Sam started with me, man.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I love Sam Gilpin.
Yeah,
he's such a doctor, right? Such an amazing human. That market up there is interesting, man.
Yep. Sam's a stud, man. Sam's in our. He's under Berto. He's in Portland. So he's a stud.
PNP.
Yep.
Is that their? What is the?
They're PNW or Elite. Yeah. Yep.
Love Sam, dude.
Yep. Sam's a stud, man. I was just with him maybe a month ago. So
yeah.
So
for you guys, do you run a lot? It's a lot of setter closer programs.
We run setter closer. We run. We do still have a fairly decent sized summer program, but we're definitely pushing guys more to go year round. Yeah, I think like anybody, a lot of us came from summer programs, so we still have a piece of that that's really big. Like our volume in Illinois this year has just been crazy. So that's a big summer program.
That's changing too, though.
It's changing. Yeah,
thanks, man.
Yeah, we've got less than 30 days. Before it goes.
What is it? So I was just on the phone with about the Illinois. What is it that they're taking away net metering? Is that right? And you have to
net metering's going away. It's got to be submitted by December 14th, I believe.
If it's not PTO'd by December 14th, then they go into whatever. So basically, like for guys from California, like we're in NEM2 to NEM3, but if you're not PTO'd by, I think it's PTO by a certain date, you fall into. And they haven't come out and said exactly what it's going to look like.
Yep.
So the people that are not PTO'd are just going to fall into whatever it's like.
Yeah.
What's that been like for us? It was a landslide, like a holy shit moment.
Yep.
Like, because we're doing weight out there.
Yep.
It's not in my region. I think it's a lot in a different division, but what's it been like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's been good in some ways because there's a huge urgency factor.
Yeah.
And on the flip,
same with NEM3.
Yeah, exactly. On the flip side of that, obviously, it's we're trying to prepare for what that looks like post change. But I think the biggest thing for us is we're trying to do right by the customer by cutting off sales under NEM or not NEM, but under the net metering promise. So as of September 1, we're going to change the document.
Where we're going.
Yeah, so that everybody gets PTO prior to that. So that's big, but we've had a ton of volume there in our division the last 2 years. We've had great leaders out there.
Well, they had SRAC and
SRAC's huge.
I feel like Illinois was like the great migration over the last couple years.
Yep.
I'm interested to see where the next
Dude, I'm a big believer, the guys will do the best where they live, where they want to live. Because guys are always asking, where's the best market to be? Where do I want to
live? Though.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, wherever you want to live year round is where you're going to produce. And we have a guy, shout out to Alex Winters. He's sold over 200 deals in Illinois the last 2 years. So he'll break 200 again this year. I think he's at 184 sales right now. Crushed last year, installed 130 last year. But he lives in Illinois year round. And he produces, rain, wind, snow, summer, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So, I think that's big.
We have John Soriano runs the Valor for Legacy out in the San Diego area. And those guys all live out there. Super dope group, man. I've been out, they're one of, the liveliest. And it's cool because they're really localized. They're close to a division. They have just a ton of guys. They have so many operators in one office.
Yep.
But I remember the transition from NEM2 to NEM3, kind of watching John from Vegas, operate. And just his mentality was this is where we live. This is our state. These are our people. These are our homeowners.
Yep.
They're 52 cents. I mean, it's insane prices out there.
San Diego prices are nuts.
Bananas.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, we can still save people money. And they just got their head. I agree. It's not running from your problems, but figuring out how to sell where you are. If you love where you live, it'll work itself out.
Totally. I think people have loved being in California post NEM2 because a lot of the amateurs are out, and only the guys that are doing it at a high level year round are going to stick around. And I think we'll have the same result in Illinois.
I was on a plane, so my Northern California team does great, and it's great PPW. It's 52 cents up there.
Yeah.
So you're selling a PPA.
It's crazy. PPA
At 32 cents.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's bananas.
Yeah.
And, you throw a battery in there and
NPU,
and
solid.
the biggest objection is this can't be real.
Yeah.
Because they're like, and I've had guys, they're like, I don't know, maybe we should like raise the PPW so they're only saving like $80
Yeah.
because they think it's like, I remember I was on a plane back from Sacramento and I do the podcast.
Yep.
And it's a kid, I think he was with Lumio or he was with somebody. And he's like, hey, Lee Barber. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, he's like, who are you with? I'm pretty sure it was Lumio. He's like, yeah, I'm going out to Blitz. And I'm like, I was leaving SAC, and I'm like, "Will you live here?"
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah," and I'm like,
"Why?
You're leaving here?"
Yeah.
And I can't remember where he was going, but I'm like, it's people like it is probably that is you see people who are really good at like just selling, actually explaining things, like explaining the sales process. Like I just don't think that solar needs bad salesmanship.
No, man, and I think the direction that we want to continue to go is I mean the reality is you can't be a master in every market, right? So like blitzing model, like we always have guys that run blitzes, and I'm always hesitant on blitzes because it's just, dude, number one, every market now is getting more and more complex. It's not easy to go into California and really know what you're talking about for a while. Like
I see guys out there, and then it takes them a couple weeks
totally
to get their bearings.
Yeah, and the result of like not being prepared or not knowing it is having bad customer experiences. So yeah, I think as solar gets more complex, which it is right now, like you'll have you'll have more and more guys that are really market specific, which I actually think helps the industry. I
think it helps a lot. I mean, I kind of like I've always been very professional in my sales processes. All of my guys, our region has one of the highest retention rates. I think we're 80% from sale to install. And it's a lot of just making sure that you're qualifying the customer, what they need to know. There's no when we were doing loans, it was hard in Vegas, with a PPA because at a certain point, even Sonova was coming back with like a 2.9.
Yep.
And you throw an MPU in there and you're dust.
Yep.
And if it needs a roof, it's all the way up.
Unsellable. Yeah.
And so there was a lot of deals where we would walk away from a deal because we really explained how the tax credit worked.
Right.
And I always tell my people, like, if your antenna go up, if you're like, do you pay $7,000 in taxes?
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't know. It's like, well, go get your tax returns.
Yeah.
I'm not your tax advisor, but I do have a fiduciary responsibility. And there was a lot of deals we walked away from. And I just think, but that's what gives people confidence in you. And I think that's also what, like, giving up that single deal for a rep can eventually create volume because they believe in themselves. They believe in what they're doing. They believe in what they're selling. And as a person, they don't carry that kind of funky weight. And I think the more of the industry has that and this kind of consolidation, it starts to create that.
Yeah, I think to your point, like the moment you realize your product's not for everybody is the moment where you have that conviction level with the people that should do it.
They should do it.
And that's when I've noticed guys really take the next step is when they can really, they can disqualify people. And then on the ones that are qualified, it's like, man, I'm not leaving this house until this makes sense.
You need this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this is going to save you. So what's the future of solar look like?
Future solar.
Industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, to what we talked about earlier, I think there's going to be more consolidation. I mean, it's interesting right now. I think the loans are going to start coming back. I mean, we've seen interest rates drop a little bit. There's noise about that. It's
November will be interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think I think loan companies are still trying to figure out how to value a solar loan and what the risk profile looks like on that. So,
dealer fee.
Yeah, exactly. So
we got AGs. I can't remember where it was. There was a class action lawsuit on dealer fees.
Minnesota.
It's Minnesota.
Yeah, we just opened up Minnesota, and our loan products have to be different there. Like, we don't sell a traditional dealer fee loan. Mm-hmm. So
just be honest. It's gross.
Yeah, no.
36% of your loan, is
totally.
A dealer fee is like, and I've talked to a lot of these guys, and they rationalize it by saying, well, the solar loan is not as aged as a mortgage, so it seems like it's more. I'm like, there's enough data.
Yeah.
There's enough data to say it's a secure loan. Most people aren't keeping a solar loan longer than 7 years in the first place. They're either selling their home or paying it off. It's like, they're safe.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think I think a lot of that's coming still. Looking at Minnesota, how we have to operate there, it's definitely different than it is in other states. Mm. And so, our loan agreement looks different. The dealer fee is much different. There's only two options. It's very simplified. Mm. There's much more language in there, disclaimers about, the dealer fee that there is. So I think it's going to go in that direction. And again, I try to not get our guys in a position where they're thinking like a brand new first year sales rep. They have to understand that, to your point, if we want this to be a long-term industry, we have to be willing to accept those changes and that, a lot of that bad behavior has to go. overcharging customers, not explaining how tax credit works, not helping them understand the dealer fee. Like they have to know what they're getting into. And then I think the other piece of that too is making sure that companies are doing business the right way. Like they're there to last, So, but yeah, I mean, I'm optimistic about where things are going, and I think, making sure that guys are aligned with the right companies, leaders that plan to be there for long term. Like there are companies even today that I'm still competing against that I know for a fact they're there for 2 years. They're going to 2 years and try to sell.
Maybe less.
Yeah.
If they don't, if other problems, I mean, some of these guys are operating with, yeah, I agree with you. There's some stuff they're either going to sell or they're not going to be here.
I mean, like, I don't know if this is calling people out or not. You guys don't do your own site surveys, do you?
We do.
You do your own site surveys? Okay.
Oh, you mean the reps?
Yeah.
No, we have site surveys.
Okay. So like that's personally, and this might piss people off, I think that's a red flag. If your company's having you do the site survey, just talked to a rep yesterday.
I agree.
I'm like, dude, that's a red flag.
I was in Colorado with a new team, a couple guys, and I'm like, and they were like, we do our own site surveys, and I'm like, what,
dude?
Like you're not
qualified. I
agree.
I'm like, if your CEO is comfortable with you getting in an attic, you open up electrical panel, you falling through a roof, probably a red flag. Your business isn't going to be around real.
Well, nobody's getting on the roof. The rep's not carrying around a ladder.
Totally.
Like maybe he's going in the attic and poking up there and like getting a few pictures of rafters.
Right.
But like, how unqualified is that?
Right.
I don't think it should piss any. I think if your company's doing that,
Dude, it still exists, shockingly. Like, it's still there. Like, I was just recruiting a rep 2 days ago, and they were like, yeah, I do the site survey. I'm like, you do the site survey?
It's bananas.
We recruited a massive group from Lumio 8 months ago in Washington. They did their own site surveys. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of that stuff is going away. What's that? Yeah, exactly. And again, I think I get it. People are trying to make money. I get it. People are trying to sell their businesses, look as good as it can on paper. But, it's just crazy to me. And I think, shout out to Legacy, shout out to Freedom. I think, they've been ahead of the ball on a lot of stuff.
No, I think you guys do. Yeah, it's like I think there's a few people. It's like you said, it's Run, and Run's interesting. I don't have anything bad to say about. There's only a few companies that I don't really agree with what they do or how they're acting, and there's a lot of bad actors, when there's a lot of bad practices, when there's a lot of bad sales practices. It's just it's funky, and I'm actually enjoying this. Like I feel like the next couple of years are going to be exciting. I think there's going to be a ton of opportunities. I think that there's going to be more regulations, but I'm just a person that's like that it doesn't really, I don't feel like it affects me in a negative way. If it's like, if we got to sell more the right way with more regulations, like that's fine. Like I do believe in consumer protection. I do believe that some of these guys forget that these are people. Totally. These are like mothers and fathers and grandpas and sisters and like people, a lot of, a good portion of the people that we're selling solar to, it actually puts bread back on the table.
Totally.
Especially, in California, where it's like you're looking at gas prices and land prices and land taxes and auto insurance and gas and a 52-cent price of power up there. You're like, that's bananas. And you can change that. That puts bread on the table for somebody, and you're going to rip them off. Like,
for sure, man.
I just don't vibe with it.
Yeah, I think, with all the, kind of regulation, bank kind of headwinds we have, tailwinds are still exponential, which are cost of power, continued electrification of the grid, increased demand. I mean, there's just so many things that are still, so powerful. So I think, solar's here to stay. Advice for guys is align with good leadership, align with a company that's got a long-term plan, align with a company that's doing it the right way. Don't be doing your own site surveys. Yeah, man.
So on that token, for the first year or 2 year guy that is either having trouble or doesn't know if this is his career, or like what's your advice for those guys?
Yeah, I think I think the first thing I would say is like there's always this idea that people are born salesmen, and couldn't be farther from the truth. Yeah. Right? Like I think that was my preconceived notion early on. And I remember my dad being like, I don't know if you're a sales guy. And, I'm really not. Like, people spend time with me, I'm not the guy that comes off where, it's like, oh, that guy's a sales guy, right? So I think first thing I would say is like, you, especially as a first rep, you have no idea what this job could do for you. And I think, I'm proof of that 100%. I remember my very first, in 2013, I remember sitting down with my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife. And I was like, I have this goal. I want to make $100,000. And she's like, there's just no way. Like, there's just no way, right?
Possible.
And, and so, obviously like that year, I remember going out and doing it and how excited I was and how, that was kind of a pinnacle moment for me where I just was like, man, there's just so much to be had. So for a brand new guy, I think just think bigger. That would be my advice. Like, you have no idea where this industry can take you. It's an absolute blast. You're constantly going to be challenged. You're going to spend time with some of the most incredibly talented, hardworking, big time thinkers.
Yeah.
And with solar, I think for me, it's what's been exciting is solar for me has been a bigger, more exciting product than Dish or Alarms ever was. It just has so much more legs, I guess.
There's a lot to it
of where it can go.
Dynamic, yeah.
Yeah, and just the potential of it is so much bigger. Just not only just on the sales side, on the commission side, but also on just where it can go as a product. The technology of it. So yeah, my advice would be like, you have no idea where this can take you. Like, financial freedom is something that we want for all of our guys. We think that if a guy plugs into us for 3 to 5 years, they can put themselves as a young guy in a position that they could have never imagined.
Yeah.
And that's the difference for me compared to what my new guys have now. Like my first year, it's like if I made 20, I made 22 grand my very first summer. Yeah. And that was like, I'd made it. Guys now these days, when I sit down with them, it's like, if they're not making 100 grand, they're like sneezing on it.
Is this weird? Like, I don't mean to, we're getting towards the end here. I don't want to keep carrying on. I love just talking. But I'll have guys and they're making, where they were making 40 and now they're making 250.
Yeah.
And they're like, there's this kind of diva thing that comes with it sometimes where it's like, you have the potential to make 355 million at some point. It's like, get checked into like reality.
Yeah.
Where we have an amazing opportunity here, and I'll have guys that'll come in and it's like, they think it's almost like they think things should be easier.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how much do you need to make for you to accept that success is just hard?
Yeah.
It's hard now. It's going to be, but back to what we were talking about when you were talking about it's hard everywhere. Nobody's perfect. Legacy's not perfect. Pros isn't perfect. Freedom isn't perfect. Run's not perfect.
Yep.
But in my experience, like, hard is hard until you're really good at it.
Yep.
And then it's not hard. But what happens is you just transition hard because you're going from like settings hard until settings not hard, closing's hard until closing's not hard, recruiting's hard until recruiting's not hard, maintaining recruits is hard until it's not hard. Guys have this thing where they're on another team somewhere. It's like, yeah, go step away from 2 weeks from your team and still see if it still operates.
Yeah.
Like learning how to manage a few teams, a division, a region. It's like, understanding that like that's the beauty. The hard is the beautiful part. And if you're in hard, like, and sticking your head around and like looking for shiny diamonds everywhere else, looking for easy, like who's got an easy sign that I can run to? You're going to run to wherever you're running to. And the easy is not easy. It's still hard. You just have to relearn all the hard until you get good at it. And it's like, it's just a call out to maybe some of the 3rd, 4th, 5th year guys. When you're making a couple $100,000, and it's hard, it's because you're in a new level of this thing.
Sure.
Like, enjoy it. Like, keep enjoying it.
Yeah.
Like, keep enjoying hard.
Yeah, and I think I couldn't agree more. I think just understanding like this is people wish all the time they had this, right? Where you had a job where you can make great money, you can be surrounded by great people, and that the opportunity is endless, right? And those 3 things are what make this industry so unique.
100%.
And so yeah, man, like the change, all the changes and whatnot, is it crazy? For sure. But to your point, like, just the focus on self-development, the focus on getting better, and align yourself with great leaders that care for you, that want more for you. And there's no roof to it.
Love it. Chris, man, we're in an hour 19. We're right on mark.
Awesome.
So I appreciate you coming out, man. You're all the way from Boise. Real quick, you have 2 girls?
2 daughters.
2 daughters. How old are they?
I got a 4-year-old, Charlotte, who's 4, and then I've got a 1-year-old, Audrey, she's just a wild thing.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And your wife, what's her name?
Stephanie.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming down here. I know you got teams, but spending some time with me away from your family, and like, it's really cool to hear your story and like the origins of like, I'm just a student of the game, man. I think people, I listen to Zaza's podcast, Casey's podcast, Jeff's podcast. It's just like, there's so much information out today that can make all of us better. So I appreciate you coming.
Appreciate
down,
it, man. Thanks for having me.
Telling your story and like letting us all know who you are and like your story. So super dope.
Absolutely. Appreciate you.
Thanks, brother.
Take care.
Yep.